Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, 1877. Part 1. A Symphony of Discordant Hearts. The great symphony of discontent begins not with a fanfare, but with a domestic dissonance. In the elegant Moscow home of the Oblonskys, a lie has been uncovered, freezing the household in a silent agony. Prince Stepan Arkadyevitch, Stiva, a man crafted for pleasure, finds the warmth of his life extinguished by his wife Dolly's discovery of his affair. The air, once light with affection, is now heavy with betrayal. It is into this fractured world that two figures journey, destined to unravel the threads of several lies. The first is Konstantin Levin, a landowner whose soul is rooted in the soil of his estate, who arrives in the city burning with a single tremulous hope: to offer his heart to the young Princess Kitty Sherbatskaya, Dolly's sister. In the Sherbatsky drawing room, Levin is an oak among hothouse flowers. His love for Kitty is pure, earnest, and utterly overwhelming to him. But Kitty, floating in the radiant, shallow waters of her first season, is blind to the depth of his devotion. Her gaze is fixed on the brilliant Count Vronsky, an officer whose grace and status embody the very glamour Levin lacks. When Levin stammers his proposal, her refusal is gentle but firm, a blow that sends him reeling back to the solitude of his country estates, convinced of his own unworthiness. The second traveler is the remedy for the Oblonsky crisis. Anna Arkadyevna Karenina, Stiva's sister, descends from St. Petersburg like an angel of mercy. From the moment she steps onto the Moscow platform, she carries an aura of enchanting vitality. And it is there, amid the steam and clamor of the station, that her eyes meet those of Count Vronsky. The encounter is a spark in a room full of gunpowder, instantaneous, dangerous, and mutually understood. While Anna works her magic, soothing Dolly's wounded pride with a wisdom born of compassion, and persuading her to forgive the errant Stiva, the consequences of that single glance are already unfolding. The grand ball, intended to be the culmination of Kitty's dreams, becomes the theater of her undoing. She enters, a vision in white, expecting her fate to be sealed in a declaration from Vronsky. But as the music swells, a different drama consumes the room. Anna, in a simple black gown, and Vronsky become the center of a gravitational field of their own creation. Their dance is not a mere social ritual. It is a public confession of a private passion, a silent dialogue of such intensity that it eclipses all else. Kitty watches, her world crumbling, as the man she loves is spiritually whisked away before her eyes. The following morning, fear-stricken by the force she has unleashed, Anna flees Moscow. But the thread of fate has been spun. Vronsky follows, and on the blizzard-swept platform of a wayside stop, he confronts her, his declaration of love hanging in the frozen air. Her admonition to forget him is a plea to herself as much as to him. The journey ends in St. Petersburg, where reality awaits in the form of her husband, Alexei Alexandrovich Karenin. His flat voice, his weary eyes, and the cold pressure of his fingers are a chilling contrast to Vronsky's passion. As they depart the station, the shriek of a train brake and the news of a watchman crushed to death on the tracks strikes Anna's heart like a prophecy of doom. While Anna in St. Petersburg finds herself trapped between Karenin's carapace of duty and Vronsky's relentless pursuit, the echoes of the ball reverberate in Moscow. Kitty falls ill, a sickness of the spirit, her humiliation a public secret. Meanwhile, Levin on his estate seeks solace in the primal rhythm of scything fields alongside his peasants, the solid earth a balm for his wounded heart. Art 1 closes not with a resolution, but with a terrible, gathering storm. Anna, having confessed her fear of Vronsky's attentions to her husband, is met not with understanding, but with a lecture on propriety. Karenin, a master of bureaucratic memoranda, believes he can file the chaos of human emotion away with a directive. He cannot see that he is not dousing a flame, but smothering a fire, ensuring it will burn all the more fiercely when it finally breaks through. The first movement ends, leaving its characters poised on the precipice, their fates intertwined by attraction, rejection, and the relentless weight of a society that prizes appearance above truth. Part 2. The Deluge. If Part 1 was the gathering storm, Part 2 is the deluge. The carefully maintained facades of society and self begin to crack under the weight of irresistible passion and relentless despair, sweeping the characters toward irrevocable consequences. The act opens not in the drawing rooms of Moscow, but in the harsh, waning light of a hunting field. We find Konstantin Levin on his estate, seeking to cauterize the wound of Kitty's rejection through sheer physical exertion. The rustic poetry of peasant life, the satisfying exhaustion of manual labor, these are the poultices for his soul. Yet a letter from Steva Oblonsky, mentioning the Sherbatskys, pierces his fragile peace, reopening the ache of a happiness he believes is forever lost. His struggle is one of the spirit, a battle to find meaning in a world that has denied him love. But the central drama unfolds in the cold, formal atmosphere of St. Petersburg. Anna Karenina, who returned home intending to resume her life, finds herself in a gilded cage of her own making. The city itself feels alien, the social whirl now a gauntlet of knowing glances and whispered judgments. Count Vronsky, a man unaccustomed to denial, pursues her with the single-minded focus of a campaign. He appears at every ball, in every salon, his presence a constant. Thrilling accusation. Anna's resistance, once a matter of principle, becomes a battle fought on shifting ground, her will eroded by the very force of her desire. A pivotal moment arrives during a steeplechase, a spectacle of aristocratic bravado. As Anna watches from the stands, her husband, Karenin, sits beside her, a monument to impassive duty. When Vronsky's horse falters and crashes, nearly killing him, Anna's composure shatters. Her raw, public cry of anguish, a guttural sound of terror and love, is a confession more damning than any words. For Karenin, it is an indecent spectacle that offends his sense of propriety above all else. That night, he confronts her, not as a wounded husband, but as a statesman delivering an ultimatum. She must end the affair to preserve the external decorum of their marriage. His coldness, his obsession with form over feeling, finally extinguishes the last ember of Anna's guilt. In the vacuum it leaves, passion rushes in. The dam breaks. Anna surrenders to the affair with Vronsky, and in the throes of their consummation, the ecstasy is instantly poisoned by a profound and terrifying moral sickness. For her, their love is now a crime, and she is marked by an inescapable shame. Vronsky, by contrast, is triumphant, his happiness unshadowed by her metaphysical dread. This fundamental dissonance in their conscience, her torment, his bliss, establishes the central tragedy of their union. The narrative then turns its gaze to Kitty Sherbatskaya, convalescing at a German spa. Here, freed from the stifling expectations of Russian society, she encounters a constellation of characters who reflect potential paths. Most significant is Varenka, a serene, selfless young woman who devotes her life to good works, and Madame Stahl, a pious invalid whose faith seems both exalted and performative. In this environment, Kitty begins the slow, painful work of rebuilding her self-worth, moving from the vanity of a jilted girl toward a more profound understanding of compassion and purpose. Her healing is a quiet counterpoint to Anna's spectacular ruin. The part culminates in a scene of devastating intimacy. After Anna reveals to Vronsky that she is pregnant with his child, their secret becomes a tangible, growing reality. The impossibility of their situation is now absolute. Driven to a final, desperate extremity, Anna writes to Karenina, confessing everything and begging for a separation. She and Vronsky await the response, believing it will bring either liberation or catastrophe. Karenina's answer, however, is a masterstroke of spiritual cruelty disguised as Christian virtue. Refusing a scandalous divorce, he dictates terms of a chillingly cold hell. The affair must continue in secret. The external form of the marriage will be maintained, and he will keep their son, Seryosha. To be separated from her son is for Anna a punishment worse than death. As part 2 closes, she is utterly trapped, bound to a husband she loathes, carrying the child of her lover, and severed from the one pure love of her life. The darkness has fully descended, leaving no path back to the light. Part 3. The Harvest of Earth and Spirit. Part 3 turns its gaze from the claustrophobic drama of the adulterous triangle to the vast, open landscapes of the soul. It is a symphony in 2 contrasting movements, one set on the fertile earth, exploring the struggle for authentic meaning, the other in the drawing rooms of hypocrisy, where a biological crisis forces a moral reckoning. The narrative finds its anchor once more with Konstantin Levin at his country estate, Pokrovskoye. Here the turmoil of the heart is sublimated into the rhythms of the land. Tolstoy immerses us in the epic grandeur of the harvest. Levin sheds his gentleman's coat and works shoulder to shoulder with his peasants, his body aching, his mind emptied of everything but the swing of the scythe and the sweep of the field. In this primal exertion, he discovers a profound, almost mystical communion with the soil and the men who work it. This is not a mere distraction from Kitty, but a philosophical quest. He grapples with the fundamental questions of his existence, his relationship to the land, his purpose as a landowner, and the possibility of finding contentment without the love he thought would define him. It is a harvest of the spirit, yielding a hard-won sense of value rooted in labor and stewardship. Parallel to this, in the genteel environment of a German spa, Kitty Sherbatskaya completes her convalescence. The frivolous girl who danced at balls is being replaced by a woman of character. Through her friendship with the selfless Varenka, she learns the quiet dignity of service, moving beyond her own wounded vanity. When she witnesses the petty moral compromises of the pious Madame Stahl, Kitty recognizes the difference between true virtue and its performance. This journey of introspection prepares her for a return to life, humbler and more substantial than the creature she once was. The scene then shifts violently back to St. Petersburg, where Anna and Vronsky's world contracts under the weight of Karenina's imposed hypocrisy. Living a lie for the sake of appearances, Anna becomes increasingly isolated and paranoid. Vronsky, restless and emasculated by his role as a secret lover, chafes against the constraints. The tension breaks when Anna, defying her husband, appears publicly at the opera. The resulting social ostracism is swift and brutal. She is met not with direct condemnation, but with a cold, collective silence more devastating than any shout. A clear signal that she has been cast out from the world that was once her own. The climax of the part is triggered by a raw biological event, Anna's confinement during childbirth. As she lies near death from puerperal fever, the societal masks crumble. In her delirium, she pleads for reconciliation, and a remarkable transformation occurs in Karenina. Confronted with the sheer physicality of mortality, his rigid bureaucracy of the soul dissolves. Touched by a genuine, uncalculated Christian compassion, he forgives Anna completely and, in a moment of supreme grace, extends his forgiveness to Vronsky, even taking the weeping count's hand. This spectacle of mercy, however, proves toxic to the very passionate absolves. Witnessing Karenin's magnanimity, Vronsky is overwhelmed by his own grotesque role in the drama. His love is exposed as a destructive force next to Karenin's saintly pardon. In a wave of self-loathing and shame, he returns to his quarters and attempts suicide, shooting himself in the chest. He survives, but the act shatters the romantic illusion. As Part 3 closes, the crisis has passed. Anna recovers physically, but the spiritual clarity evaporates. Karenin, softened by the near-death experience, finds himself bound to the wife he forgave, now trapped not by coldness, but by a pity he cannot sustain. Anna, saved from death, is plunged back into a life that has become, if possible, more complicated and joyless than before. The harvest is in, but for these characters in the city, it has yielded only a bitter crop of despair, shame, and a tangled web of obligations from which there seems no escape. In the country, Levin has found a measure of peace in work. In the world of society, peace has become an impossible currency. Part 4: The Unraveling. Part 4 is a symphony of dissolution, where the temporary resolutions of crisis give way to a more profound and permanent disintegration. The Christian mercy that briefly flickered in the shadow of death proves unable to survive in the cold light of convalescent life. The part opens in the uneasy aftermath. Alexei Karenin, clinging to the exalted state of forgiveness he experienced at Anna's supposed deathbed, finds it a crushing weight upon his soul. The presence of the recovering Anna and the convalescent Vronsky in his house becomes an intolerable torment. His magnanimity, so pure in the face of eternity, curdles into a source of resentment in the daily grind of existence. He is haunted by the advice of a worldly and Machiavellian figure, Countess Lydia Ivanovna, who urges him to sever the tie and secure his peace. Yet, he is paralyzed, a man whose moral compass has been shattered, adrift between a duty he can no longer bear and a forgiveness he can no longer feel. Anna, too, finds her near-death conversion was a phantom of fever. Restored to health, she is horrified by her husband's pity and repulsed by his presence. The memory of Vronsky's suicide attempt, once a testament to his passion, now binds her to him with chains of guilt and a desperate possessive love. The illusion of a harmonious solution has evaporated, leaving only a triangle of mutual misery. Recognizing the impossibility of their situation, Karenin finally yields to the pressure of society and his own anguish. He agrees to initiate divorce proceedings, a decision that carries the seismic consequence of threatening Anna with permanent separation from her son, Seryozha. It is at this moment of profound personal fracture that the narrative shifts to the estate of Steva Oblonsky, where a convergence of fates is orchestrated. Levin arrives for a visit, and simultaneously the Sherbatsky family, including Kitty, are guests. The setting is a world away from the St. Petersburg melodrama, a natural, social space where hearts can be tested away from the pressures of scandal. The encounter between Levin and Kitty is one of Tolstoy's most masterful scenes. Thrown together in the intimate setting of a drawing room, they are forced to navigate the ghost of their failed proposal. Their initial awkwardness is a palpable force, yet through a silent, tense game of chalk letters on a card table, where Kitty deciphers the fragments of words Levin scrawls to reveal a question of profound importance, a bridge is built across their past hurt. The formality melts away, replaced by a trembling, honest vulnerability. In a quiet moment away from the others, a simple, heartfelt conversation clears the misunderstandings of the past. Their love, tested by pain and matured by time, is rekindled, not with the dramatic flair of Anna and Vronsky, but with the deep, steady glow of mutual understanding. their engagement is announced, a beacon of hope and legitimacy. This joyous union stands in stark contrast to the parallel resolution in St. Petersburg. Having obtained Karenina's reluctant consent, Anna and Vronsky depart for Europe, finally free to be together. But as their train pulls away from the station, there is no triumph, only a void. They leave behind a trail of wreckage, a humiliated husband, and most painfully for Anna, her beloved son. Their passion, once an irresistible force, now has the bitter taste of ashes. They are bound not by joy, but by the shared cost of their choices. Part 4 thus closes with a powerful dichotomy. In one household, a marriage is being consecrated with the blessing of family and society, rooted in forgiveness and acceptance. In another, a union is formed in exile, purchased at the price of a mother's heart and a man's honor. Levin and Kitty look toward a future bright with promise. Anna and Vronsky speed into an uncertain freedom that already feels like a new kind of prison. The unraveling is complete, and the paths for the second half of the novel are starkly drawn. Part 5. The Hollowing of Freedom. Part 5 juxtaposes the sacred architecture of a traditional marriage with the hollowed-out reality of an illicit union. It is a study in contrasts, where the fulfillment of one dream leads to spiritual birth, and the fulfillment of another leads to a profound existential crisis. The part opens on a note of sacred anticipation. The preparations for the marriage of Konstantin Levin and Kitty Sherbatskaya are imbued with a sense of bustling, wholesome ritual. Yet on the eve of his wedding, Levin is plunged into a sudden and comical despair. A chance discovery of his bachelor-era diaries, filled with youthful transgressions, convinces him that he, a flawed and sinful man, is unworthy of the purity that Kitty represents. This crisis of conscience is not about love, but about a deep, almost religious reverence for the sacrament he is about to undertake. It is a final purification by fire, and it is quelled only by the wise, understanding confession of the priest, who assures him that marriage itself is a divine instrument of grace. The wedding ceremony itself is one of Tolstoy's most celebrated set pieces. Rendered with breathtaking detail, the liturgy is not mere backdrop, but the very heartbeat of the scene. As Levin and Kitty stand before the altar, their internal states are laid bare. Levin, overwhelmed and trembling, finds his doubts miraculously dissolving in the radiance of Kitty's serene and absolute presence. The ancient rites, the crowns held above their heads, the symbolic walk around the lectern, transform their personal love into a cosmic union. They emerge from the church not merely as a married couple, but as a new, single soul, welcomed into the warm embrace of family and community. Simultaneously, in the rootless exile of Europe, Anna and Vronsky's long-awaited freedom curdles into disenchantment. Unmoored from Russia, their society, and their purpose, they discover that passion, when made the sole focus of existence, becomes a consuming void. Anna, desperate to bind Vronsky to her, cultivates a fierce, possessive jealousy, while Vronsky, restless and unoccupied, chafes against the constraints of a life devoted solely to amorous intrigue. Their love, once a defiant rebellion, now feels like a beautiful, airless room. A brief return to Russia proves catastrophic. Karenina, under the influence of the zealot Countess Lydia Ivanovna, refuses Anna access to her son, Seryozha. In a scene of devastating poignancy, Anna secretly visits her son on his birthday, a stolen moment of agonizing love that only deepens her maternal wound and her alienation. Society's door is firmly, finally, shut in her face, confirming her complete ostracism. The narrative then follows the newlyweds, Levin and Kitty, to their country estate. Their transition into married life is not a fairy tale, but a tender, realistic negotiation of two individualities becoming one. They navigate petty disagreements, discover each other's quirks, and in a profoundly moving culmination, face a crisis together: the grave illness of Levin's brother, Nikolai. Here, Kitty's true strength shines. She sheds her girlishness to become a ministering angel, tending to the dying man with a practical compassion that astounds Levin. In the face of death, their bond is sanctified not by romance, but by shared duty and profound respect. Kitty's subsequent announcement of her pregnancy crowns their union with the promise of life and continuity. Part 5 closes with life's most profound antitheses: a cradle prepared in a home filled with love, and an atmosphere growing increasingly strained, a gilded cage for both its inhabitants. Vronsky, though still in love, feels trapped and stifled by Anna's constant demands and the relentless emotional drama. He throws himself into the management of his estate and provincial politics, seeking a sense of purpose and an identity separate from his role as Anna's lover. Anna interprets this healthy engagement with the world not as a necessity, but as a deliberate withdrawal of his love and attention. They remain together, bound by passion and habit, but their relationship is now a tense stalemate, moving inexorably toward a crisis. Part 6: The Illusion of Contentment. Part 6 explores the fragile architectures people build to survive their choices, contrasting a bucolic idyll with a gilded descent into deeper despair. The narrative returns, as if for solace, to the rural world of Konstantin Levin and Kitty. They are settled into the deep, satisfying rhythms of country life, awaiting the birth of their child. Their existence is a tapestry of simple, profound moments: hosting Kitty's family for the summer, engaging in the life of the estate, and nurturing their bond. The central event here is a sprawling, epic hunting expedition Levin undertakes with his friend Stiva Oblonsky and a visiting Vronsky. The hunt serves as a poignant, unspoken dialogue between two worldviews. Levin, in his element, finds a primal joy in the marshland, the dogs, and the skill of the chase. For him, it is a sacrament of nature. Vronsky, by contrast, is a handsome and competent, but hollow figure. Recently resigned from his military commission, a sacrifice for Anna that has left him without a purpose, he approaches the hunt with a desperate, almost frantic intensity, as if trying to shoot meaning into his life. The excursion highlights Levin's integrated existence and Vronsky's profound dislocation. It is through Stiva that Levin is drawn into the affairs of the neighboring estate of Vronsky's wealthy brother. Stiva, ever the charming mediator, persuades the resistant Levin to visit Vronsky's magnificent, modern estate. Levin, a traditionalist, is forced to admire the efficiency and innovation Vronsky has implemented, yet he perceives a cold, soulless perfection in it. The estate, like its owner, is impressive but lacks a heart, a true connection to the land and its people. This encounter is a quiet clash between Levin's organic, spiritual view of life and Vronsky's restless, modern striving. The heart of this section, however, lies in the parallel journeys of Anna and Dolly. Dolly, seeking a respite from her own financially strained and emotionally complicated family life, accepts an invitation to visit Anna and Vronsky at his country estate. She finds them installed in a palace of luxury, a world of impeccable taste and boundless material comfort. Yet, from the moment of her arrival, Dolly's keen eye perceives the fissures in the facade. Anna is a creature transformed. She dazzles with a new, sharp, and almost feverish brilliance, immersing herself in the management of the estate, in correspondence, in her appearance, a whirlwind of activity designed to outrun the void within. Dolly, the embodiment of maternal devotion, is unsettled by Anna's apparent neglect of her young daughter, Annie, and her single-minded obsession with Vronsky. The freedom Anna fought for has become a cage of her own making. Her love curdled into a paranoid, possessive need to command Vronsky's absolute attention. Vronsky, for his part, plays the part of the devoted partner with a growing sense of entrapment. He is polite, generous, but emotionally absent. Dolly witnesses a tense, coded argument between them, a glimpse of the deep resentment simmering beneath the surface. Anna, terrified of losing him, employs a volatile mixture of coquetry and accusation, while Vronsky retreats behind a wall of impeccable, chilling courtesy. Dolly's visit concludes with a sense of profound pity. She sees that for all their wealth and freedom, Anna and Vronsky are living a false life, a performance of happiness that is draining their souls. As Part 6 closes, the contrasts are devastatingly clear. Levin and Kitty, in their modest home, experience the terrifying, beautiful crisis of their first childbirth, a trial that binds them closer in shared vulnerability and awe. Meanwhile, Anna and Vronsky, in their splendid mansion, are locked in a slow, silent dance of mutual destruction. One household is building a life, grounded in reality and acceptance. The other is maintaining an illusion, a beautiful structure beginning to crack under the weight of its own unsustainable fiction. The peace of the countryside cannot silence the quiet desperation growing within its most elegant walls. Art 7. The Final Descent. Part 7 is a relentless march toward tragedy, a symphony of psychological disintegration set against a backdrop of fragile hope. It is the novel's devastating crescendo, where the threads of Anna's life unravel with a terrifying, irresistible momentum. The part opens with Levin and Kitty, now new parents, living in the secluded bliss of the country. Their world is one of domestic routine centered on their infant son, Mitya. When they receive a visit from Kitty's family, including her sister Dolly and her children, the estate is filled with the chaotic, vibrant energy of family life. A scarlet fever scare among the children briefly throws the household into panic, but it passes, reinforcing the sense of a resilient, loving unit facing life's trials together. Levin, observing this simple, profound world, feels a deep contentment, yet even he is haunted by a recurring existential anxiety, a fear of death, and a search for a faith that would give his happiness meaning. His struggle is intellectual and spiritual, a quiet torment in a life of material joy. This domestic idyll is brutally juxtaposed with Anna's accelerating descent in Moscow. Desperate to force a resolution to her agonizing limbo, she persuades Vronsky to travel with her to Moscow, ostensibly to see her son, Seryozha. The visit is a disaster. On the day of the boy's birthday, she arrives unannounced at the Karenina house, only to be coldly turned away by the sanctimonious Countess Lydia Ivanovna. The brief, frantic glimpse she steals of her son is a moment of excruciating pain, severing her last tangible connection to her past life and confirming her absolute exile. This rejection is the catalyst for her final, frantic unraveling. Convinced that Vronsky's love is waning, Anna becomes consumed by a pathological jealousy. Her mind, once brilliant and sharp, now twists every glance, every delayed return, every social obligation into proof of his infidelity. She oscillates wildly between passionate declarations of love and bitter, calculated cruelties, manipulating him with the threat of suicide. Vronsky, trapped and exhausted, remains for a time, his sense of honor and pity warring with his desperate need for freedom. Their relationship becomes a hell of mutual torment, a cage from which neither can see an escape. A pivotal, public humiliation occurs at the opera. Defying Vronsky's warnings, Anna insists on attending, believing she can brazen her way back into society. Instead, she is met with a wall of scorn. A neighboring lady pointedly gets up and leaves her box, a gesture more devastating than any direct insult. This final public ostracism confirms her worst fears. She has sacrificed everything for a love that has now become her prison, and the world has no place for her. The end comes with a terrifying, lucid inevitability. After a particularly vicious quarrel, Vronsky leaves the house for an extended errand. Convinced he has gone to his mother to arrange a marriage with another woman, Anna's mind snaps. In a feverish state, she wanders Moscow, her thoughts a chaotic stream of memories, regrets, and bitter observations. Every sight and sound, the bustling commerce, the happy couples, the trivial conversations, feels like a mockery of her despair. Her philosophy crystallizes into a dark epiphany. She is a blot on Vronsky's life, and her death is the only way to restore his freedom and punish him for his coldness. Her journey to the train station is a somnambulist's pilgrimage. As a goods train rumbles past, she recalls the death of the railway worker on the day she first met Vronsky, the bad omen. In a moment of horrific clarity, she throws herself under the next passenger train. Tolstoy renders her final seconds with brutal intimacy. The candle of her life, which she saw as a flickering page read to the end, is snuffed out by the light of the approaching train. Her last sensation is not of pain, but of horror and shame. Part 7 closes with two stark images. The first is Anna's broken body on the tracks, a life of passion and intelligence extinguished. The second is Vronsky, weeks later, shattered and hollowed out, volunteering for a suicidal military expedition to Serbia, seeking his own death on a different kind of battlefield. The passion that defied an empire has ended not in triumph, but in dust and ashes. Part 8. The Search for Meaning. Part 8 serves as the novel's profound and necessary coda. In the wake of the cataclysm, it turns from the tragedy of individual passion to the universal questions of how life is to be endured and for what purpose. It is a movement from the social to the metaphysical, concluding not with an answer, but with a revelation. The part opens in the somber aftermath of Anna's suicide. The focus falls briefly on the secondary figures swept up in the tragedy. Alexei Karenina assumes guardianship of Anna and Vronsky's infant daughter, Annie, a gesture of bleak, Christian duty that offers him a hollow purpose. The fate of Vronsky is swiftly and poignantly sealed, consumed by a guilt so profound it has erased his very will to live. He is a ghost of his former self. He volunteers to lead a squadron of soldiers to the Serbian-Turkish conflict, not as a patriotic hero, but as a man seeking a noble, bureaucratic death. His mother acknowledges that he is gone from her, a casualty of the same devastation that took Anna. This swift dispatch of the St. Petersburg drama clears the stage for the novel's true finale, the spiritual climax of Konstantin Levin. Having retreated to the sanctuary of his country estate, Levin is surrounded by the very things that should constitute happiness: a beloved wife, a healthy son, a prosperous property. Yet, he is plunged into a deep and terrifying existential crisis. The joy of new fatherhood has been eclipsed by the raw, shocking reality of mortality. The birth of his son forced upon him the miracle of life, but with it came the terrifying specter of death. He becomes paralyzed by the thought that his entire existence, his love for Kitty, his work on the land, is ultimately meaningless, a fleeting spark in an infinite, uncaring universe. He attempts to reason his way out of this despair, feverishly consuming works of philosophy from materialist and idealist thinkers. He finds no solace in their abstract systems. They offer intellectual propositions but no sustenance for the soul. He considers turning to faith, but his rational mind rebels against the rituals and doctrines of the Church. He is trapped between a need for meaning and an inability to accept the forms in which it is offered. A man starving in a room he believes is filled with invisible food. The crisis comes to a head during a moment of intense anxiety when he fears Kitty and his son are in danger. In his agitation, he unconsciously utters a phrase that surprises him. I shan't go astray with this feeling. I won't believe what I'm saying to myself. I believe in love. I believe in the good. He realizes that the intellectual pursuit of faith has been his mistake. The novel's transcendent resolution occurs not in a church, but in a field. Listening to a simple peasant, Fyodor, speak of a man who lived for his soul and remembered God, Levin is struck by a lightning bolt of understanding. It is not a theological argument that saves him, but a glimpse into a way of being. He sees that the good life is not an intellectual concept to be grasped, but a mode of action lived in accordance with a moral law that is innate and accessible to all. This law is not from a distant God, but is God, and it is revealed not through reason, but through the conscious choice to live rightly. He looks at the sky, the fields, and the people he loves, and the world once dead with meaninglessness is suddenly reanimated with a sacred purpose. The despair lifts, not because he has found an answer, but because the question itself has dissolved. He understands that the faculty for faith has been within him all along, guiding his best impulses. His life, his love for his family, his duty to his land and his peasants, is its own justification. The novel ends with Levin looking at the stormy sky, his soul filled with a tremulous, hard-won peace. He knows his doubts will return. His character will still be irritable and imperfect, but he has found a foundation that cannot be shaken. Anna Karenina thus concludes not with the crash of a train, but with the quiet, ongoing struggle for a meaningful life, affirming that even in a world of suffering and uncertainty, the possibility of faith and love offers a path toward redemption. To show love and appreciation, like, share, and subscribe.